In a remarkable display of informed decision-making, a diligent sergeant intervenes when an officer's actions appear questionable. This incident unfolded as a citizen found themselves in a distressing situation due to an officer's actions. Recognizing the need for a fair and just resolution, the vigilant sergeant steps in, armed with knowledge and expertise. With a firm understanding of the law and proper protocol, the sergeant asserts their authority and orders the officer to release the citizen. This story serves as a powerful reminder of the importance of well-informed leadership and the potential for positive change within law enforcement. The Mendota Police Department contacted YouTuber Christopher B. Stett on July 4, 2019, while he was conducting an audit on a public sidewalk outside of the Mendota Lutheran home in Mendota, Illinois. The MPD had received a complaint from the residents of the Lutheran home that a guy was attempting to film the inside of the building from the outside. At this point, Mr. Peter Stett is formally detained and must comply with the officer's orders. In the infamous Terry v. Ohio case, the Supreme Court held that when a police officer uses physical force or other forms of authority to restrict a citizen's freedom, a seizure has taken place. At the moment that Officer Holland ordered Mr. Peter Stett to stop, he was formally detained and was subject to the officer's lawful orders. A prime example of a law whose language is so ambiguously written that almost any action could be interpreted as a violation is Section 26 of the Illinois Criminal Code, which states that a person commits disorderly conduct when he or she knowingly does any act in such an unreasonable manner as to alarm or disturb another and to provoke a breach of the peace. Codes similar to this one exist in almost every state and are typically just as ambiguous. The fundamental principles of the code essentially allow officers to imprison anyone for any reason and are fundamentally flawed. A Terry stop is when someone is stopped by officers. Mr. Beater is correct that Officer Holland is conducting a Terry stop based on the reasonable suspicion provided by the 911 apartment received. The Supreme Court has ruled that 911 serve as reasonable suspicion and that law enforcement officers may conduct Terry stops based on reasonable suspicion that a person may have been involved in criminal activity. It's impossible to know what the 911 caller told the Mendota police, but the officers mentioned that the caller was worried about Mr. Peter Stett's mental stability because of his bizarre actions. It's likely that a court would find that the officers had the right to stop Mr. Peter Stett based on the information provided by the 911 caller. As Officer Holland puts Mr. Peter Stett in handcuffs, Sergeant Stewart arrives on the scene. It's a common misconception that police must have reason to believe someone committed a specific crime before they can detain them. According to the legal precedents set by the Terry case, an officer can detain a person to further investigate if they have reasonable suspicion that criminal activity is taking place and can provide specific facts that support their suspicions. While photographing on a public sidewalk is generally not considered a crime, it is important to note that the protections provided by the First Amendment have certain limitations. In specific places, individuals are entitled to a reasonable expectation of privacy. In the landmark Supreme Court case of Katz v. United States in 1967, Justice John Marshall Harlan established a two-pronged test to determine whether an individual's expectations of privacy is reasonable. The Katz test examines whether the person has displayed an actual subjective expectation of privacy and whether society is willing to recognize that expectation as reasonable. That being said, it is worth noting that the First Amendment does safeguard the act of public photography. The public domain encompasses anything that can be seen from a public location. While individuals may assume they have a reasonable expectation of privacy within their homes, courts have consistently ruled that photographing the interior of a home through an open window is a constitutionally protected activity. The right to silence, which is guaranteed by the Fifth Amendment, can be a potent tool for anyone dealing with the police. It is generally a good idea to keep quiet as much as you can, but only within reason. The right to silence was created to prevent people from incriminating themselves, so successfully exercising it calls for striking a balance between providing police officers with the information they need and refraining from answering questions that could be used against you. This was the case for Iowa Auditor Daniel Robbins, who was detained for taking pictures of a police station from a public sidewalk and lost the ensuing lawsuit because he failed to declare his intention to exercise his rights. Silence frequently speaks louder than words, and it is crucial to understand how your actions will be perceived in a courtroom after interaction has taken place. Mr. Bieterstedt is eventually informed by Holland and someone who appears to be a facility employee that he is being arrested for disorderly conduct. Sergeant Stewart is accompanying Mr. Bieterstedt out of the patrol car when something amazing occurs. Officer Holland receives a C- because despite being within her rights to detain Mr. Bieterstedt, she essentially admitted to soliciting a complaint from a facility employee and fully intended on making an arrest. This is because, after Sergeant Stewart intervened, Officer Holland uncuffed Mr. Stedt, and after a calm discussion with the sergeant, he was released. The officers left the scene without further incident. It is a common issue to witness officers soliciting charges, although proving such behavior can often be challenging. It is not uncommon for officers to seek a charge simply to make an arrest and swiftly conclude a situation without thoroughly examining all perspectives involved. Those who have interacted with the police can confirm this trend. Officer Holland followed the usual routine of prioritizing peace over the administration of justice. Fortunately, Sergeant Stewart intervened and corrected her actions. Sergeant Stewart deserves high praise for engaging in a difficult yet respectful conversation with Mr. Bieterstedt and for questioning Officer Holland's tactics. He went a step further by ordering her to release Mr. Bieterstedt. It is increasingly rare to witness an officer who possesses a solid understanding of constitutional rights, and it is even rarer to see a supervisory officer challenge charges brought by a fellow officer on those grounds. We commend Sergeant Stewart for his knowledge and awareness, ensuring that peace was restored and justice was served equitably. Well-informed officers like him deserve to hold supervisory positions, and this encounter showcased exemplary policing. Regarding Mr. Bieterstedt, he receives a B+ for his actions. Although one could argue that he was engaged in a constitutionally protected activity, his decision to record a retirement facility raises ethical concerns. It is important to note that progress within the constitutional awareness movement is not achieved by alarming the residents of an elderly home, such as the Lutheran home, with a camera. This type of behavior not only tarnishes the overall perception of the movement, many residents of such facilities may have mental instability, and pointing a camera at them can be perceived as obnoxious and disrespectful. Despite not fully exercising his Fifth Amendment right to remain silent, Mr. Bieterstedt remained calm and composed throughout the encounter and ultimately faced no charges. It would be beneficial for him to revisit the Terry case and deepen his understanding of reasonable suspicion. Overall, Mr. Bieterstedt performed well, and as his legal knowledge expands, so too will his auditing abilities and ethical awareness. We hope this content has shed light on crucial issues and sparked conversations. To stay informed and engaged, subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell. Share this video to spread awareness and encourage others to join the conversation. Together, we can work towards a fairer and more accountable law enforcement system. We would love to hear your thoughts and opinions. Feel free to share your insights and experiences in the comment section below. Your perspective is valuable, and it helps foster meaningful discussions among our community.